So today's class is about managing human resource. Like what we have talked about, the management functions that any manager is supposed to be doing at the workplace. We spoke about finance as a function, manufacturing and operations as a function, marketing and sales as a function. Human resource management is one of the functions. You could have quality management as a function. You could have other things like, say, administration and safety as a function. If you have larger organizations, you could have logistics and supply chain as a function. You could have inventory management as a separate function if it's a large inventory that the company manages. So human resource and managing human resource is a proper managerial function. Each of us, when we join organizations, and some of you, because you already had the work experience, you know that you got to manage your human resource. Now, managing human resource encompasses all the activities from hiring the right person for the right job at the right time, at the right place, basically, and making sure that the person you have hired is capable of doing what he or she is supposed to be doing. And the person you have hired is trained in ways that actually benefit the organization. The performance can improve, is of the highest quality. It's also important you can compensate and reward and recognize good performance. This way, you're making sure that the employee whom you have hired is trained, is given the orientation that they require, is given the kind of support they require for demonstrating, evidencing, and contributing to organizational goals and performing at the highest level possible, and to keep them motivated and to have them happy and retain talented people within the company. You got to make sure you have the right compensation program, the benefits program, the incentives that you have, both extrinsic rewards and intrinsic rewards that you want to give them. You want to make sure that you are keeping these people for a long time, because human capital is precious. You will not be able to achieve big things if you don't have smart people to work for you. So if you look at all the organizations, that great organizations that we generally discuss in class, they are great because of the kind of people that they have at all levels, at the top management level, at the middle level management level, at the lower management level. Everywhere, it's people who contribute, it's people who bring their unique set of skills, talents, and they actually bring in their treasure and talent and time together. And because they do that, you're able to achieve larger than life size goals, which are organizational goals, much bigger than what we could do individually. People together can do a lot. So this chapter is about managing this very important human capital. So the learning objectives for today's class, we want to describe the key components of human resource management process. So what are the basic, if you separate managing human resource into several elements of a process. So what are those, process elements and the important influences on that process? What determines if the process is effective or not? Discuss the tasks associated with identifying and selecting competent employees. So that's an important task, because if you have the wrong people take up, different kinds of jobs in the company, you have a problem. You might have the right people, but placed in wrong jobs. That could be a problem too. So you want to make sure that you've identified what kind of jobs you have. You want to make sure that you're picking up and selecting, recruiting and selecting the right personnel so that they are doing the right job and they're able to contribute and use their skill sets properly. Then we are also having this objective in this class that we are explaining how employees are provided with this kind of skills they need. Skills and knowledge and competences required on the job keep changing because jobs are continuously changing. So you need to identify what kind of training needs every employee has, and that has to be matched with the kind of jobs that they perform. And if you find that certain elements, certain skills have to be updated, and they have to learn new skills because the jobs have changed, you need to make sure that you give them the appropriate training. And if you did that, they're going to be happy that you're training them, that you're investing in building that kind of capacity, and you're actually investing in building potential amongst your own employees. They feel a sense of belongingness. They feel recognized as being important to the organization, and they're happy contributing because now they have set of skills, competences that can be matched to their job requirements. So we'll discuss that under learning objective 3, 7.3, because the chapter is 7. The next learning objective in today's class is describe strategies for retaining competent, high performing employees. It's very difficult to find right people, and then you've invested a lot of money and effort and time in training them and keeping them updated on skills and competences required on the job. It's also key that you want to retain them, keep them for as long as you can, because a satisfied, trained, capable workforce, which is committed and highly engaged and involved, is something that you don't want to let go. So retaining talented people, retaining people who really can contribute to your workplace, that's a key element. You don't want to lose smart people, basically. And then we have the next objective: discuss contemporary issues in managing human resource. So how did human resource management emerge, and how did it evolve over a period of time, and what are the kind of challenges, unique challenges that you face while managing human resources these days, because jobs have changed, how technology has influenced how we manage human resource has changed. So obviously there are certain contemporary issues that you would want to discuss. So we're going to the first learning objective today, which is describing the key components of human resource management process and the important influences on that process. As I said in the beginning, human resource management is having the right people to do the right thing. So they are at the right place, that meaning that they have the right jobs at the right time. So somebody who should be leading, somebody who should be managing a crisis right now, say during the pandemic, should be in that leadership responsibility, should be taking decision making responsibility, should be doing that kind of job that contributes in managing a crisis situation. Like right now, we have a situation. So we need right set of people who are making decisions. We need right set of people who organize work. We need the right set of people who can implement that, execute strategies. We need the right set of people who take decisions on how to compensate employees and keep them happy and keep them recognized. So having the right people do the right thing at the right time, extremely important. Suppose I'm a management guy. Can I go teach physics? Absolutely not. I'll do a bad job, terrible job. So you got to make sure my skill sets match the kind of job that I'm assigned to. So you take care in hiring the right person who has got the necessary skills to teach, say, Management 102, Principles of Management. He or she is bringing in that kind of experience, educational credentials, some research background, some consulting experience with industry. He or she knows some practical stuff in the field of management. That is your right person. And of course, there should be that affinity towards teaching, a passion for teaching, a true care for their students, and that kind of empathy in realizing their problems from their perspective. So obviously you need a good teacher is a combination of everything: credentials, experience, skills, competences, and ability to work with students and think for their benefit and ensure that students are progressing in the right direction. You got to be a mentor, you got to be a guide, you need to be a support system for your students. And now you found the right person to do teaching our principles of management. So human resource management is a very important thing. If my customers are to be happy, if I need to generate business, if my students have to be happy in this case, and if these students have to go and tell good things about the School of Management, that means you got to have the right person doing the right thing at the right time. And in that case, you will go to talk good things about the school and then the professors and the kind of support and then the overall learning experience that you have had. So HR is a very important, function that every person has to do. I'm not a HR manager in NYIT, but what am I doing is managing human resource. I work with my peer group. I work with colleagues. I work with my boss. They're all human beings. Then I work with a lot of students. They are human beings as well. All of you are resources because you have set of skills, credentials, and unique competences. So how do I work with several sets of stakeholders? Is because I know the skills of managing human resource and I appreciate the unique value that human resource brings to the workplace. So I just wanted to tell you how important. You go to a hospital, is the quality of doctors, the support staff, the nursing department, people from there, and the paramedics and everybody on the front line. Everybody should be equipped. There should be great people, skilled, highly skilled, experienced, and they got to know how to react in a given situation, whether it's a normal situation or an emergency situation. So the quality of the kind of people that you have, not one individual, collective quality of the entire group of people that are doing some activity, they have got to be smart. They have got to do great things. And that's why hospitals or these places are good, because you have the right set of people doing the right thing. So human resource for anything, for universities like us, for hospitals, for manufacturing organizations, for restaurant businesses, for tourism business, aviation industry, for software industry, for automobile industry, is the kind of quality of human resource that you manage and keep investing, which will determine how successful your company can be. Now, the HRM process, this looks like as if it's a very complex diagram, but it isn't actually. We'll go one step at a time so that you kind of understand what we are speaking about. So if you look at the yellow, okay, let's go back to the whole circle, which is there, enveloping everything inside. If you look at it, it talks about the environment basically. Yeah, it talks about the environment, and then you have things like unions, which can affect what you do as a human resource manager. The work processes within the organization itself, like how do you organize work? That's going to be a big influence of how you do other management, human resource management functions. Then you have things like diversity. What kind of workforce do you have, and how do you manage diversity? How do you respect and make sure that people from all kinds of cultures, all kinds of regions, countries are inclusively added into the organizational effort. So diversity definitely is a macro level influence on what you do at the human resource. Legislation, law in each country is different. So obviously you got to be aware of law that determines equity, fair wages, stuff like safety. In the US, you have OSHA, for example. You have law which actually determines discriminatory kind of decisions that you take. You have law for workers' compensation, insurance for unemployment. You have plenty of things that govern health, medical care, benefits that you have, the benefits programs that you could have. So extensive laws can be there in certain countries, and law is different in each country. So the level of legislation definitely affects the kind of how we organize our human resource management processes. Restructuring. Suppose if there is a case where two companies are merging, two companies are coming together. So in that case, you have a massive restructuring. Departments can be combined, some jobs can be combined as well. So certain jobs might have to go because of the nature of work, the nature of business that you will be doing post merger. So, and downsizing. Sometimes you might realize that you have too many people and you don't have as much business, as much work. So, what kind of decisions will you take depends on the scale of your operations and the level of demand from the marketplace. So, these elements are all, macro level environment kind of influences on how human resource management process is organized within the company. And then let's go back to, say, the yellow squares that you have or rectangles that you have. The first one I would focus is on strategic human resource planning. You need to figure out and anticipate what kind of people you require, what kind of personnel you require in the future. Look at your jobs, look at your own organization's business, and ask yourself, how will my business evolve? How will the jobs evolve over a period of time? And then you're asking and anticipating and forecasting the kind of skill and competences that's required of my own personnel. So predicting, forecasting your requirements based on what kind of business you might be doing and how jobs are going to evolve, that is what we call as strategic human resource planning. And you want to ensure that you have the right side of people all the time, not just for today, even for jobs that you might anticipate in the near future. And if there is certain technology innovations that are going on within the company that are strategic, and you're actually making changes how you vision what you want to achieve for the company in the next 5 years? Do you have a forecast of the kind of people that will drive that vision? Do you have a forecast of the kind of skills that are required for driving that future vision of the company, which is based on certain, say, technology or innovation? So, strategic human resource planning is an important first step in HR process. It's followed by what we call as recruitment and downsizing. It's strange. It's funny that they put recruitment and downsizing together, because recruitment effort is always talking about how do we find prospective employees who could be possible future job incumbents within the company. Downsizing goes together because not always you're recruiting. Sometimes you might have to take tough decisions of downsizing. We don't need as many people. Can we redeploy them? Can we reorganize work? Can we do something like, say, job sharing, work sharing? We don't have to, lay off people, or you don't have to furlough employees. And those are decisions which are related not to recruitment because you're not hiring more people, but those decisions are related to downsizing. I would not want to use the word downsizing because today's organizations, they use the word called as right sizing. You need the right number of people. So instead of simply saying downsizing, which actually means that you want to lay off certain people or you want to have, retrench some of your employees, instead of that, maybe the focus should be on not having to recruit too many people, because you have a clear sense of the volume of work, the quality of work that has to be accomplished. You could use the word right sizing as a strategy for human resource. So instead of putting recruitment and downsizing, you could simply say recruitment and right sizing. And then you have, of course, once the recruitment effort is there, see, recruitment is about trying to advertise for the kind of position, making sure that you know what kind of job that you're hiring for. So the job analysis, job description is there, and you know the kind of people that you're looking for, credentials, experience, skills that you're looking for, the job specification basically, and you know what you want to compensate moving forward, the job evaluation. So job analysis has three components. One is called as job description, which describes the tasks and responsibilities to be performed on the job. Then there's the second element called as job specification, which means the kind of credentials, qualifications, skills, and competences required by employees. That is the second element of job analysis. The first one being job description. The second is job specification, which talks to the educational qualification, experience, and skills and competences. The third element is called as job evaluation, which actually means the compensation that you are willing to pay for that particular title or for that kind of job position. So the compensation could mean the base salary that you will pay, the incentives, performance-based pay, rewards, the bonuses that can happen, employee stock option plans that can be applicable. All those kind of details are part of the job evaluation. So together, job description, job specification, job evaluation, together, what we call as job analysis. So it's important for any recruitment effort, you should have a proper job analysis, because then you will know what to advertise, and what places you can find the right set of people. So basically, after you know what kind of jobs you have within the company, because you have a clear job analysis for each kind of position that you want to advertise for, you're actually scouting for the places where you can find the right person. It could be in colleges. You could hire a consulting company which will scout for the right kind of person. You could have, job fairs. You could represent your company at job fairs. You can go searching for the right person. You could advertise in websites like Indeed or LinkedIn, and you could advertise for these positions that become available from time to time. So all this become part of recruitment. You could advertise certain positions in trade magazines. You could put it on your own job site. You can have it as a job site link on your own web pages. So recruitment can be done several ways, but you got to find what will work for you. Where will you find the right kind of people? You don't want to be spending time and money and effort in wrong sources of recruitment. Once that's done, you go to the selection process. So obviously there'll be tests. You have to screen the candidates who are applying. So look at all the CVs. You might have a software which can help you find the right CV, shortlist them. Then you could do some certain kind of tests. So you could have tests which determine how good they are in certain skills. You could also have tests related to personality, attitudes, the outlook that they have, the psychological testing that you could do. So all these tests, and then again a final interview, which will also determine what kind of expectations that you have and what kind of pay package that they are happy to accept as an applicant. And once they're selected, you go through that process of orientation. You want to make sure there is an onboarding process. You want to make sure that the new employee understands what their responsibilities are, what kind of reporting lines that are available, whom should he or she be reporting to. And you're also basically making sure during the orientation they understand colleagues, they understand the workspaces, the do's and don'ts, the norms at the workplace. The orientation is a long drawn process to get somebody familiar with organizational culture. So orientation is, to begin with, onboarding, socialization process, and it can go as deep as embedding cultural values of the company. So once that's done, it's just not enough if you actually orient the new employee to the culture, to the norms and everything. It's also important that you focus on developing skill sets, having a mentor, maybe taking on-job training, or making sure that they enroll for some off-job training opportunities, maybe continued education opportunities, maybe something like job rotation, so that they get more familiar with other activities within the company. They're learning all the time on the job, and it also improves their performance. But performance has to be appraised, has to be evaluated, and you've got to make sure they're achieving what they're supposed to be achieving in terms of key performance indicators. They're called KPIs. Every employee has certain KPIs to achieve. Every employee has certain goals to achieve. So you've got to measure performance and compare them to those standards that you set for them. So that's what we call as performance appraisal. Obviously, somebody who's not performing up to the standards, you want to find out what is the reason that's causing that discrepancy. And if the discrepancy is beyond the employee's capacity to control, then it's always okay. But otherwise, you might find some need for training. The employee might want some extra support to achieve something. They need allocation of further resources. Maybe he or she requires a team to achieve certain tasks and goals. So, obviously, performance management just goes beyond evaluating somebody's performance. You want to make sure that you facilitate improvements in performance. You want to see if training is required. You want to see if resources are required. You want to see if they want to be given by the team to work on certain goals, because they're very difficult to achieve, individually. So performance management is way much beyond simply measuring performance of each employee against key performance indicators. You want to make sure and facilitate continuous improvements in performance. Once they perform and they achieve the key performance indicators, you got to make sure that they're being compensated, recognized. So compensation could include how you determine base package, base pay itself. It should be equitable, so they get paid for what they perform. And then obviously you have the element where an employee does better than expectations. So it's performance linked pay. Do they get incentives? Do they get some kind of recognitions, rewards? Do they get promotions? All those decisions are very important towards compensation and benefits. And what kind of medical benefits do they have? What kind of, say, children's education benefits that they might have, travel benefits that they could have, paid vacation that they could have, 401k benefits and medical benefits, insurance benefits that they might have. So all those become part of that decision, which we call as compensation and benefits. Then you have the final one, which we call as safety and health. If you look at what's happening right now because of the pandemic situation itself, safety and health has become such an important thing. Every organization is making sure when they have employees return to the workplace that their safety is not compromised and their health is taken care of, because medical insurance, medical bills, and that can become a cost driver within a company. So you want to make sure your workforce is healthy and safe, and you comply with all legal requirements. So together, these are called, the yellow ones are all called process elements for the human resource management function. So I think I tried to explain using this diagram what we are going to see in the whole of the chapter. Let's go to the next slide. As I was saying, you have those variables that govern all HR processes and how we organize HR. You have the legal environment, all the laws which have to be complied with. So you have, say, the Equal Pay Act, which actually prohibits pay differences for equal work based on gender. You cannot make gender discriminations, and if somebody is doing, equal work, they should get the same pay. You cannot discriminate just because of gender differences. Civil Rights Act, which again prohibits discrimination based on any other thing like race, color, religion, or national origin, or again gender. Age discrimination, you prohibits discrimination against employees 40 years and older. So you just can't say somebody's old for a particular job and you can't discriminate based on that. Vocational Rehabilitation Act, any discrimination based on physical and mental disabilities is against the law. Americans with Disabilities Act, again, this is again with people with disabilities or chronic illnesses. You cannot, and anybody who requires certain kind of accommodations, they should not be discriminated against. You have Worker Adjustment and Retraining Notification Act, which requires employers with more than 100 employees to provide 60 days notice before a mass layoff. So they get prior notice if there is a layoff. Layoff is when you're temporarily, uh, you know, don't require workers to come to your premises to work, but you've got to give enough prior notice. Family and Medical Leave Act, it gives employees in organizations with 50 or more employees up to 12 weeks of unpaid leave each year for family or medical reasons. Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act permits portability of employees' insurance from one employer to another. So anything that you've actually put as your contribution to a certain insurance, if you're moving from one employer to another, that that benefits or those kind of benefits are portable from one employer to another employer. So you have a lot of these legislations in the US, and you have, yeah, OSHA is there on safety. Mandatory safety and health standards have to be met. The Privacy Act, the legal rights to examine personal files and letters of reference. Again, even for example, we are not supposed to be discussing any other students' grades in public. So I cannot actually reveal one of your grades to another student. So we maintain that kind of privacy that every student deserves. And that means there's a lot of legislation that's there in each country, and legislation in each country are different. Suppose, for example, right now we have legislation on, say, harassment at the workplace, including sexual harassment. So we go through specific training as employees, as professors, we have to take training and know the procedures that we have to comply with in case we find instances of, say, sexual harassment or harassment at the workplace. We know the Title IX office, whom should we go and whom should we be reporting to. And if we see something happening at the workplace, we cannot simply keep quiet. It's our responsibility to report it to the right authority in the university. So obviously we're aware of it. We go through that mandatory training, and we're happy to doing that because we want a workplace that's conducive. Discrimination is not going to be tolerated, and harassment at the workplace is definitely going to be reported. We want to ensure a place which gives due respect to every individual, whether they're students or faculty or staff or anyone. So legal requirements will control all HR processes, and we have to be aware of it. And suppose we are operating in China, we got to be aware of Chinese legislation. We are operating in Brazil, we got to know what the legislation there is. We are operating in India, we got to know. So obviously, because we work for multinational companies, it's not necessary you will be always in the US. You might have to travel because of work from your company's side. You might travel to other countries. In that case, you got to become familiar with their legislations because you should be aware of it. Otherwise, you could put yourself in trouble. This is what I was saying. Law is different in different countries. They just put law in Canada, Mexico, Australia, Germany. They're all different, regions basically. So you cannot assume law is same everywhere. You got to be aware of it. So we just gave till now what we discussed is an overview of all the HR management processes which can be relevant and which are relevant for you. Now we go to the second learning objective, which is discuss tasks associated with identifying and selecting competent employees. We want to make sure our recruitment is in the right place and we're getting the right kind of person selected for doing certain jobs in the company. So that starts off with employment planning. As I was saying, you need to plan for what kind of people you require and based on the kind of business you are in. So that's a forecast you're making. This is the kind of work that our company does. These are the products or services that we manufacture or deliver to our customers. This is the kind of jobs that we will have to make sure that these kind of goals or products or services are being offered. And once we know what kind of jobs, we know also the skills that are required to perform these jobs well. And then we forecast these are the kind of credentialed employees that we require for now and for the future. So that's a very important first step called employment planning. And the second step is recruitment and downsizing. As I said earlier, recruitment is a process of trying to figure out what sources are available. How do we advertise to these sources where we can find the right set of people? So to advertise, we got to have a proper job analysis, which is a combination of, as I was explaining earlier, job analysis is a combination of description of the job, which we call as job description, job specification, which again talks to the qualifications, credentials, and experience, skills, and competences that every individual should have, and the kind of compensation and incentives and benefits that we are happy to offer to each of those job titles. So once we have all that in place, we're figuring out how do we create an advertisement, which are the sources, recruitment sources that we can exploit, and where is that we can find a large pool of eligible prospective employees. Again, downsizing is a decision that every HR department and manager must take because we don't want to have too many people. We want to have the right set of people who will have enough work and opportunities to prove themselves and perform. So downsizing is an important decision. As I said earlier, instead of using a negative, kind of term for it, we can say right sizing. I would always think we should have the right number of people. And then selection process. Is it a simple selection process? Is it a comprehensive selection process? Do we have one interview and then we take somebody? Do we have a comprehensive process before we select somebody? I can give you an example of, say, myself. If I have to apply for a job, perhaps I go through an initial interview because there are plenty of people like me who might apply for a job. And then the preliminary interview will determine whether I make the first cut. The first cut might say, "Oh, we spoke to Prabhakar. He's good. He's really good. We are interested. We'll keep him in the first list." That's the first cut because the preliminary interview went on really well. The second round could be a discussion of my research work, consulting, and administrative responsibilities. And if they're happy with the kind of credentials that I have on my resume, and I'm happy discussing evidences of each of what I mentioned in the resume, I might make the second cut, and they might ask me to come down to you know, their campus and ask me to present to either their students or to a bunch of, faculty who could be the committee that is going to make a final call, final determination of whether I should be selected or not. So that could be the third cut. And the final cut is the negotiation where I'm offered a pay package, the kind of benefits that I might get, the privileges that I might have, the release time that I might get, the vacation that I'm entitled to. And that is when I have to make a call and say, am I interested in taking this job offer or I'm not? This whole process is what we call as selection. So you might have it simple, you might have many steps, many cuts, so that you make sure that you're selecting the right person who can contribute to teaching, research, consulting, administration, service to the school, service to the community, service to the academic, professionals that we deal with. You want to make sure that somebody is multi-skilled and willing and committed and has credentials to back, that kind of claim. So that's what we call as a comprehensive selection process because you don't want to make a mistake. As I explained to you, job analysis is very important for the recruitment process. It includes job description, which is describing the job, and job specification, which describes the person, the qualifications, the credentials, skills, and competences that an individual has. So that's required for job analysis, which is again required for having the right advertisement, and those advertisements are in the right places like LinkedIn, Indeed, or other job websites, and or maybe consulting companies, or maybe you're putting them in job fairs, or everybody who comes there can participate and make sure you have enough audience for your recruitment process. So I think I explained this. Determining future employment needs is a result of the demand for organizations' products and services, and not just today's products and services, what kind of innovation or technology that you might be pursuing. And then you have to determine what kind of human resource will be able to drive that kind of innovation and technology. Recruitment, how does recruitment happen? It can happen through internet. The advantages, you can have a large audience and you can have large number of applicants. You might have immediate feedback, but also because of the internet, you might generate a lot of unqualified candidates applying. So perhaps, companies that use internet as a source are also using a software that goes and searches for keywords in the resumes and filters these unqualified candidates so that you don't have to talk to them. Employee referrals. I know a professor who is extremely good, who is very, proactive, is a good teacher, is into research and consulting. I can refer them to School of Management. It can happen through employee referrals. So, by the way, guys, when I'm speaking to you, I have to let you know that you got to have a strong network. Somebody who can speak and say, I know this individual. I would like to recommend or refer this individual. So it's very important that you build a network. And whenever you join a company, have a good set of professional family, of friends at the workplace, and so that you have built that network who can speak on behalf of you and say, I know an individual. That individual is great. They have the skills, they have the kind of commitment that we are looking for. They are highly motivated, they're driven, they have leadership qualities. So you employee referrals is a great source of recruiting the right set of people. So you want to create a good impression wherever you go. Company website. On my company website, I can have job postings, all the kinds of jobs from time to time that are available. Again, there's wide distribution. Anybody can visit these websites. Say, for me, for example, if I have to apply for professor's jobs, I can go to higher education jobs. I could go to Chronicles of Higher Education. I could go to Indeed. I could go to LinkedIn as opportunities for me to apply. I could go to Acadius. I'm telling you about me. If I have to find another job, I have several sources, and I can actually visit all the university websites looking for specific job postings which are there. And of course, Google can help me search them either. So, college recruiting is a great source because you get a large centralized body of candidates, but perhaps limited only to the entry level positions because they're just college graduates. You cannot hire them for higher level positions unless they're a mature set of students where they already come with a lot of experience. In Abu Dhabi campus, for example, I had my MBA students who are all 35 plus in age. If somebody came to our college to recruit MBAs, they're talking to people who have 10 years, 7 years, 8 years, even 15 years of experience. So they could easily recruit them at middle and even top level management. So it all depends what you mean by college recruiting. Professional recruiting organizations, there are several. Suppose you're hiring for a dean of a school. There are plenty of professional recruiting organizations which specialize in certain positions. They know they have access to a pool of all deans in the US, and so they can actually pull these resumes. They can contact them, they can find you the right person. So you have good knowledge of industry. These recruiting organizations have great knowledge about the industry and requirements, but they're not committed to only one company. They're committed to all universities because they're professional organizations. They're not patronizing one university over the others. They can actually serve several universities. Handling layoffs, that is when you have temporary, you don't need as many workers, you have a lull in business, your demand is going down, you're hit by, say, the pandemic right now. You could go firing, permanent termination of jobs. Layoffs is temporary, termination only for a few days, few months, and when business gets back to normal, you can ask them to come back. Attrition is when you do not fill any vacancies. Suppose if two or three faculty have retired from School of Management, let's assume, and if you're not hiring any new faculty, that is what you call as attrition, or it's also called as hiring freeze. Transfers, you might not be doing very good in, say, New York, but you're doing, say, very good in Canada. You can actually relocate one or two faculty and transfer them to the Vancouver campus or China campus. That's what we call as transfers. It's a very positive way of utilizing the wonderful human capital that you have. Reduced work weeks, we might work for lesser number of days, and we might work lesser number of activities and job responsibilities. I take lesser pay. You can cut my pay and cut the number of work weeks that I have to work, because our business is not doing great right now. But once we have full business, once we have proper demand for whatever we're doing, you can increase the weeks to the normal work weeks, and then you can give me full salary. That's a possible. And instead of firing me, or instead of asking me not to come to work, you can simply say you work less and take less right now, but once our business gets back to normal, you'll work full and you will take your full pay. Early retirements, you can give that incentive to older employees. If they want to retire, and they can actually retire with some extra benefits. Sometimes it's called as the golden handshake. So you might say, oh, if you retire now, if you want to take an early retirement just because you've served us for like 45, 50 years plus now, if you want to take an extra, you don't want to wait till when you think you're ready, you might want to consider early retirement. Just take it, but you get an incentive. And that's what is early retirement. Job sharing. Two people can share the work of one person when the business is not doing great. Of course, then they share the salary as well. They're not going to get full pay. They will share the salary appropriately, and it's a portion between the two. And once the business gets back to normal, demand is high, you're getting enough sales. Yeah, you don't have to go for job sharing. Two people can do the job of two people, can take full pay. So that's another possibility. So handling situations where the business is not doing great, you can use any of these options. I would not try and fire people because it's difficult to find the right set of people again. Temporary layoffs, maybe extreme conditions, attrition, hiring freeze makes sense because you just don't have as much business. You don't want to fill up those vacancies. Transfer is a very good policy because some other locations you might have steady or stable sales and steady demand. You can transfer your employees there. Reduced work weeks is a great thing. Instead of furloughing employees and terminating them, you can say they work less and they take less for the time being. Early retirements is a great thing to reduce cost and try and let older employees, if they're close to retirement, go. Job sharing could be a very good option. Two people share the job of one person for the time being because the business is not doing great. And then when things get back to normal, it's back to normal, full throttle work, and you can get two jobs, and for you can keep your full job and you can keep your full pay basically. So these are some very good options available to the HR manager. Now, when you come to the selecting of job applicants, this is a very interesting matrix that you have. Suppose you are using selection tools. It could be interviews, it could be the tests, it could be whatever. Psychometric testing, you can have plenty of tests that you might want to do. But suppose you are making a selection decision, which is on the x-axis, and the decisions can be rejecting an applicant or accepting. Those are the only options that you have. You can reject, or you can accept a candidate who has applied for the job and he's going through the selection process. But suppose you've rejected an employee, I mean a candidate, and basically the job performance is being successful somewhere else. He's doing great somewhere else. That's a clear example. You made an error. You rejected, but that's an error. You let go of somebody who's gone somewhere else and doing very good there. It's an error that you've committed. Your selection process was not helping you. You rejected somebody who was very successful later on the job. That's a reject error. But suppose you accepted somebody, and this individual is performing great on the job which you have selected him for. That's a very good decision. It's a correct decision. So you're getting it? So when performance is being successful, you've rejected them, it's a rejector. If the job performance is great, you've selected them, it's a correct decision. Let's think about unsuccessful performance. You rejected somebody, they went somewhere else and they're extremely unsuccessful. So it's a correct decision. You rejected the guy, and it's good because the person went somewhere else and he's done a terrible job. So that's a correct decision. But suppose you accepted somebody and the person doesn't do good on the job, he's unsuccessful. You've accepted that person, but that's a mistake. That's an error because you accepted somebody who has been unsuccessful on the job. So obviously that's called accept error. So there can be correct decisions in two cases. When you accept somebody and they're doing great, when you reject somebody and they're not doing great, those are correct decisions. When you reject somebody and they're successful somewhere else, that's a reject error. You lost an opportunity to hire a very good person. And you accepted somebody who's been terrible on the job. That's an acceptance mistake that you've done. You shouldn't have accepted. That's a mistake. So this is a classical example of how to evaluate your selection decision outcomes, whether you've been doing a good job in your selection process, and decisions that you've taken, have they been working for you or not. If they're not working for you or making mistakes while rejecting or while accepting, you need to go and revisit your selection process. Maybe the tests are not appropriate. That is where we go. Reliability of your selection tools and validity. Reliability is, suppose I'm measuring your performance while selection. It should give me the same results every time I use that selection device or tool. So when I use, suppose I'm testing your ability, I'm testing your knowledge, I'm testing your skill using a selection tool. If I measure your skill or knowledge or ability right now, it should give me a result. It should give me a measurable, quantifiable, number. And if I measure you in the evening with the same tool, I should get the same result or similar result at least. In that case, that tool is reliable. Whichever tool that I'm talking of, it could be psychometric tools, it could be aptitude tests, it could be math, English comprehension, it could be any aptitude test. Are these tests reliable? If I use the test in the morning, if I use the test again in the afternoon, if I use the same test in the evening for the same individual, I should get similar kind of results, if not exactly the same result, because then the tool is reliable. So reliability of the tools, selection tools that you're using, extremely important to make sure that your selection process or tools that you're using in your selection process are reliable. Validity is when I'm using a selection tool, does it actually measure the kind of skills that I need them to perform on the job? If I'm testing you on a particular skill and you basically will never use that skill on the job, it's not a valid instrument. It's not a valid selection device or tool. If I measure a particular skill, or if the tool is measuring a particular skill, that skill should be relevant to your job. That skill should make your job performance better. Then it's a valid selection device. It's a valid selection tool. You don't have to test me in physics if I have to be teaching management principles, management 102. You don't have to test me on chemistry if I'm teaching management 102. It's not a valid tool. I don't have to be extremely good in physics or chemistry for me to be able to teach, make a decent job, and do good on teaching management 102. It's not a valid tool. It could be valid for somebody who has to teach chemistry. It could be valid for somebody who has to teach physics. It's not a valid tool for somebody who's supposed to be teaching management 102. So you've got to use valid selection tools and tools that will give you consistent results, reliable tools, so that you do not make those selection decision errors, which could be accept error in certain cases, which could be reject errors in certain cases. Guys, do you have any doubts here?
No, Professor.
Okay. So tests are not just for school, tests are also for getting you a job. So please, guys, that means that you need to be on your best level. You got to be at your best all the time, not just for taking courses and getting good grades, which is also important. You got to be good with all your courses. You got to be aware of what's happening out there in whichever field that you want to go and get a job. You got to know the latest developments. You got to be aware of it. You need to have certain skills that you are willing to offer. You got to be good and proficient in certain abilities, unique abilities of yours. You need to create a portfolio of skills and competences. That's a very important thing that you should all remember. Okay, so because you will be tested when you go for an interview, it's not they'll just give you a job offer and say, oh, you're such a sweet person, so let me give you a job. Are you capable? What is that you have to offer us? How skilled are you? How proficient are you? What is that you can contribute? How can you help us achieve what we want to achieve as an organization? So tests are not just for school, like right now. Tests are for all your life. And we always repeatedly take tests. Even if I go through a selection process, I have been tested out. I will continue to be tested out. So tests are for everyone and tests are for a lifetime. So please do understand that you need to be updated, you need to study. It's just not in your first semester. The same enthusiasm, motivation, and effort and commitment should be there even when you're graduating. That momentum has to increase. It cannot slack. It cannot get, less intense. It has to stay at the same intensity levels. So please, guys, take it seriously. Whatever courses, whatever career or profession that you're choosing, it could be interior design, it could be chemical engineering, it could be computers and software programming and cybersecurity. It could be anything related to electronics and computer engineering. It could be just management majors in finance, accounting, marketing. Any field that you're choosing, you got to research enough. You need to have credentials. You need to get some extra certifications. You need to evidence and demonstrate your skills and competences, what you bring to the table. So, learning and improving and developing skills is a lifelong experience. You cannot simply say, I'll relax, I'll stay complacent, I'll become indifferent. No, it's not going to work for you. Tests are not just for school, it's for every person for a lifetime to come. We're always learning. To be relevant, we need to keep trying. We need to keep getting better at what we do. We need to learn the new stuff. We need to be able to contribute. We need to stay relevant. Yep. Okay, so we're getting to the next stage. How do you interview somebody? So we are assuming that you've become a manager and you're selecting somebody. So if you're interviewing somebody, and if you want your interviews to be more valid and reliable, that you make sure you're hiring the right person for the right skills so that they will get a fair chance to do their jobs really good and keep your customers happy. So, first step, you as an interviewer, you as a manager, HR person who is interviewing people who have applied for jobs, look at the job description, understand what they have come for. What is the job that they're applying for? I've applied for the job of a faculty member in the School of Management. Don't ask me questions which are not relevant to the School of Management. Don't ask me questions which are completely tangentially opposite or contradicting, because you know what the job description is: teaching, research, service, consulting, fundraising, these kind of stuff. Ask me questions which are related to my job description. Ask me questions. Also, look at credentials required for that job. Do you need to have a PhD? Yes. Do you need to be good in your communication skills? Yes. Have you had relevant experience teaching at the undergraduate and graduate level? Yes. Do you have the research to back your claims? Yes. Do you have some consulting experience with the industry? Yes. These are specifications. Have you done some administrative responsibility? Yes, that's relevant. So, you as my manager, you as somebody who is interviewing me to select me or not to select me, you should be aware of the job. You should be aware what you're looking for an applicant, basically. Prepare a structured set of questions to ask. It's easy to sit there and ask questions which are random. You will not be able to keep a track of hundreds of applicants or tens and dozens of applicants who will come and face the interview. So you need to keep a set of questions and say, yes, this was done. They had some unique abilities. They demonstrated, they gave us evidence, they did this. You need a checklist of of what they're answering, each applicant is answering. Review an applicant's resume before meeting so that you get the background, you understand their field, you understand their research, you understand their teaching experience, you understand their contributions. Ask questions, very important. Listen carefully to the applicant's answers because you want to make sure you're not rejecting a good person. A very good applicant should not get rejected. So listen carefully. Don't make your own impressions. Don't be impatient. Don't let your first impressions ruin the whole interview. So you got to be careful because you don't want to make a wrong decision hiring the wrong person. And you don't want to reject somebody who is extremely good. Write your evaluation when it is fresh in your mind. Otherwise, you'll forget. If you think you're going to do that after you meet every applicant, you would have forgotten who answered what. So make your impressions, make your evaluation, make your notes, make your comments, make your, whatever recommendations in short forms, make notes, put it there across when the interview is there and it's fresh in your mind as a manager. All good points for being a good interviewer as a good HR manager. Closing the deal, it's important to retain good people, as I said. So make them feel comfortable. Do not put them at in discomfort. Don't let them start hating you. You want to keep them. You want to make sure the deal can get closed. So let that process be an experience, which is like close to an orientation. If you're really happy with some applicant, you got to make sure that you hire them for sure. Okay. The next learning objective is explain how employees are provided with the needed skills and knowledge. So the first step is job orientation. Get them familiar what is required. Don't overwhelm them beyond that. So stick to the job description. Make it clear. These are the KPIs. These are the goals that have to be achieved. This is what you are supposed to be doing in terms of tasks and activities every day. This is whom you will report to. This is the kind of power that is vested in you. You have the authority to take certain amount of decisions. These are the responsibilities that you're held accountable for. So that kind of information is job orientation. Work unit orientation is who are your colleagues, whom do you get help, who could be your mentor, and what are the kind of resources that are available for you within your work team itself. Organizational orientation, when you get the new employee to understand the mission statement, the vision, the values that the organization has, the strategic direction of the company itself, what kind of goals that are to be accomplished, what drives innovation within the company, and what do we have set out for each of our businesses or each of our departments or each of our teams. So that's what we call as organization orientation, including the cultural effects and how important, what kind of culture do we have, what kind of values, beliefs, and assumptions that we share. And you can give anecdotal information, share some stories. So orientation is a not one time, one event kind of activity. It happens over a period of time. It's not just the responsibility of one person who has to give you orientation. It can be shared responsibility, and all of us make sure that the onboarding process is smooth and the transition is great, and it actually contributes to the overall experience that the employee has, and it gets them committed, involved, and engaged, and motivated. And that those first experiences are a very important experience for any employee, especially if you want to retain them after having taken pains to recruit them. You want to make sure that they're with you. Again, so is there a need for training? Okay, where did we skip? Yeah, this is the, so is there a need for training? That's the question that you might want to ask, and I'm sure the answer is yes. None of us have all the skills that are required for a future job. Jobs keep changing, and environment keeps changing, so challenges are new and they're emerging. So if there is a need for training, what are the goals of the organization? How do we tie training so that employees get more connected to achieving the strategic goals? What tasks must be completed to achieve organizational goals? Don't give me training which is not connected with organizational goals. That's a waste of resource. So you got to make sure you're tying up training to achieving strategic goals and organizational goals. And what behaviors are necessary for each job holder to complete his or her job duties. Suppose we've got training in Canvas right now because we've transitioned from moving from Blackboard to Canvas, and because everything is now either Zoom or asynchronous or hybrid kind of delivery. and we got to be more aware of all the pedagogical tools, and then the use of technology, and the LSMs that we have. So all these kind of training actually helps faculty to adapt to this kind of challenges that the pandemic has brought in. What deficiencies, if any, do job holders have in terms of skills, knowledge, or abilities? Suppose you find me deficient in one of the quality or skills or abilities. I mean, that's very customized, need based training. So you got to identify training needs of every individual, and you got to make sure when you're, say, developing a training program, that you consider strategic goals, organizational goals, the specific behavioral requirements, and say adapting to new technologies, and make sure that you're also factoring in individual training needs before you develop and deliver a training program, because training is a huge expense for a company. It can be an investment if it's done properly, because if you're investing in developing skills and abilities, you're rewarded by high quality performance, highly motivated people, highly committed and engaged employees. So you definitely have a payoff. The return on investment is good. But if you have a training program which is not properly determined, it's not created based on the needs itself, it's not tied up with the strategic or organizational goals, then a lot of money, resources, and time gets wasted. So you need to make sure whatever I learn from training, I can transfer that kind of learning onto the job place. If I go through training, it should reflect in my performance, and it should be easy for me to bring those set of skills at the workplace and towards my job, and it should help me achieve my key performance indicators. So what kind of training methods are possible on the job? So you can give me tasks on the job and walk me through. This is what, it really helps. Say, for example, Management 102 Canvas. I'm working with, the Academic Technology Services Department of NYIT. And, NYIT has been great in that sense. They've created a separate department which can give us the technical support. And you have some of the employees under the Academic Technology Services Department whom I work every week. Then we have tied up with a company called Everspring. So they are course designers and they're experts in that, so they give me support from that as well. So every week I meet with Everspring along with NYT's Academic Technology Services Department, while I'm creating the Management 102 course module, the shell, and then building the content and making sure it's properly organized. It helps the students find what they want to find in one place, and put all the content and resources to explore, and guide you through the projects. So they're helping me with that. I meet with them every week. So to me, that's a classical example of on the job training. So as I work with you guys on Management 102, I'm working with these kind of employees and organizations that help me learn on the job. Job rotation. I can again give you my example. When I joined NYT in Jordan campus, I just came in as an assistant professor. Then they gave me this responsibility. My dean was gracious enough. He trusted in my abilities. He gave me the responsibility of director of experiential education. So I did a decent job. I could work with the Ministry of Labor in Jordan. I also worked with a Canadian consulting company to bring in opportunities for my students in experiential learning. And my MBA students got an opportunity to work with several companies. This is again experiential because they are learning by doing, they are learning hands on, they're learning with interaction with companies, with real industries. So I did the job of director of experiential education. Then my dean, because of the good work that I did, he said, "Oh, you deserve better. We're going to make you the department assessment director." Now I didn't know what was assessment, uh, and I got a great opportunity to learn on the job, but job rotation. I took another job, which is of director of assessment. So, and I was a director of assessment for a good 1.5 year. Then I moved to from Abu Dhabi, from Jordan campus. I moved to the Abu Dhabi campus, and when I moved to UAE, they made me the director of student advancement. And this was again new. This is a new director's position, but I learned. I knew what was expected of me. I learned. So when you start doing several jobs, you become very familiar with what the school does, what the mission is, what tempos the campaign statement is, what the strategic and organizational goals are, what are the overarching, elements of strategy itself. I understood plenty of things, including accreditation and stuff. So my dean made me the assistant dean. I was the assistant dean in the Abu Dhabi campus for the School of Management. So it's a job rotation. I came here in 2018 and I became the director of accreditation basically. So the maintenance of accreditation was achieved in April for the School of Management programs. We have the AACSB accreditation for all our programs, both undergraduate and graduate programs. And I'm happy to say I was the director of accreditation maintenance. And if you see right now, I became the program director for the MBA. So it's several responsibilities. I started off in NYIT in 2008, and this is 2020. So in the 12 years, I've taken several responsibilities. That's job rotation for me. Now, monitoring and coaching. I don't think it should be monitoring. I think it should be mentoring. But again, these slides are from the book, so I've just taken them down. But I think it's not a bad thing to tell you that should not be monitoring. It should be mentoring and coaching. So all these jobs that I did, trust me, those they have been great mentors, and there's been no better mentor than my own, dean. He is a great mentor. He trusts in your abilities. He tells you what to do. He also guides you in your action. He doesn't do the job for me. He doesn't enforce his opinions on me. He'll tell me directions. He'll let me explore my own approaches. He will actually, what we call as intellectual stimulation. He knows that you're capable and able to think on your own and be very creative. He gives me that kind of freedom, but he also guides me. So, to be honest with you, if I've achieved so much in the last 12 years at NYT, a lot of credit must go to my dean for his ability to trust me, for the wonderful mentor he has been, for a great leader that he has been, and the kind of champion that he has been for me. So I just told you that. Experiential exercise, role playing, simulations. Say, for example, Busy 435 course in the undergraduate program at the School of Management. We have a course called Busy 435, which is Business Policy and Strategy Capstone. We do a simulation called Globus. Now, Globus simulation is as if you have your own business. You take decisions that are related to all the four P's in marketing: product design, pricing strategies, place where how you make these things available, your product itself, and promotion, the discounts that you have to offer. Then you take decisions which are based on all the marketing effort, like what kind of retail support would you have, technical support that you would. These are all simulation. You're actually playing it as a game on the system. Then you take decisions on corporate social responsibility activities. You take decisions related to how you will take care of the manufacturing, the kind of staffing decisions that you will take. You will also take decisions on finance and how do you manage finance. So this is clear case of experiential exercise. You manage your own business. This is a capstone course. So you've learned every function of management. You know all the theory. This is a great place to try and apply that theory through a simulation. So there are plenty of good exercises, simulation kind of exercises as training tools. So you could use one of these simulation exercises as a training tool. Workbooks and manuals. I mean, there can be workbooks, there can be manuals which can give you information. Classroom lectures, the most boring ones, guys. So that's what I'm doing right now. That's also another form of training. I'm sorry, but that's, I would admit, for all these tools that you see, training methods that you see, I think classroom lectures are perhaps one of the most boring unless the faculty knows how to make it more interesting. There are other methods of training, which are videotapes and audios and podcasts and webinars and video conferencing, teleconferencing, mobile learning, e-learning. All these are great tools right now, and I'm a big fan of using technology. So I don't know if you have noticed on Canvas, I have put my lectures in as videos. Has somebody gone and seen them? For my previous two chapters, I have my full video lecture embedded in Canvas. So if anybody finds it difficult to understand when I'm teaching, because I'm telling you a lot of information, you can actually go back and listen to my lectures. They're like 1 hour, 30 minutes each. on organization structure, and there's one I think on planning. So those two lectures are already there. This is another one, the third one, which I'm recording right now. So I'll be happy to put this video also available, make it available for you at the end of this class. I'll make it available for you on Canvas, just to make sure that we are using technology the best possible way. And that means you have future reference. You can skip wherever you don't want to listen to the class. You can go to a specific slide and see, oh, this is what the professor was teaching. You might have questions. You can come back to me on Canvas. You can ask me questions on the discussion boards. I'll be happy to explain. And if you need extra time sometime later, even more than happy to sit back and be on the class or during the office hours that we have. I'm happy to come early and then talk to you separately. Okay, learning objective 4 in chapter 7. We want to describe strategies of how to retain highly skilled employees and highly talented people. Now, you might have many methods of evaluating your employees' performance. One is the written essay. You might ask, the superior, the supervisor itself, to say, can you write a letter? This is a great thing because it's simple to use. Suppose if my dean has to write a letter for me evaluating my performance, it's simple. But the thing is, it depends on how my dean's ability to write a good letter. Is he able to describe objectively what good performance is versus where I need to improve? If he does that, great. By the way, I get letters every year from the dean, and he is a great writer. So he actually makes me feel better than what I am, and I'm super happy because of that, because that's what we call as a written essay. My dean is a master of writing good letters and reports. So he does it beautifully. I know it's time consuming, but that's what he enjoys. And he champions his employees, people like me. And his letters are amazing. Each of those letters are a valuable asset for me. Critical incidents. Now, if you are looking at critical incidents, suppose you ask Prabhakar, how do we evaluate his performance? Do you evaluate my performance only in teaching? No. I think critical incidents are, suppose when I was in Abu Dhabi campus, I got for both our undergraduate and master's programs, I got the local ministry accreditation. It's called CAA, Commission for Academic Accreditation. We got the CAA accreditation for all our programs. I led that. I led that along with the faculty and staff and the administration, along with the students, along with industry stakeholders and other stakeholders. We made that possible. So for me, that's a critical incident of how you evaluate my contribution and my unique abilities in accreditation. And when I came here, we got another extension of 5 years of AACSB accreditation when I've been the director of academic, accreditation here. So if that be the case, those are critical incidents. Those are big contributions. Accreditation is big. It's time consuming. So and no, but here in my case, I think it has quantification. These are critical behaviors which are very important. Then you can use adjectives. He's knowledgeable, he's good, he's great, he's wonderful. Honesty, attendance, loyalty. These are another way of, you can create a scale based on adjectives. But again, it's subjective because you're using adjectives. They do not actually describe every time very clearly what you want to describe your employees as. So you can become a little bit more objective, more quantitative, which we call as bars. Bars are behaviorally anchored rating scales. It's a proper rating scale. Suppose on skill, can you rate me between on 1 to 10? How do you rate Prabhakar? I'm asking you this question. Say, for example, you don't have to tell it to me right now. I'm scared you're going to rate me low. But anyway, on a scale of 1 to 10, say on skill, technical skill, let's say only on his knowledge in the course itself, on a 1 to 10 scale, you could put me, if I'm terrible, you could put me as low as 2 or 3. And if you say he's okay, he's average, you can put me 5 or even 6. But if you think I'm really good at what I'm saying and how I explain it and how I can substantiate, and he gives good examples, it could be from his life, it could be from daily life, it could be from corporate experience, You can put me 8 or 9. Nobody perhaps will get a 10. That's okay. So behaviorally anchored rating scale, that's skill I'm talking about. Effort. What's the kind of effort that your professor puts? On a scale of 1 to 10, does he put enough effort? Does he honestly try? Does he give you a lot of repetition? Does he explain it again? Does he give put in that genuine kind of concern for you? On a scale of 1 to 10, is he 1, 2, 3, or is he 5 or 6, or is he at least 7 or 8? You could do that. Responsibility. How responsible is your professor on a scale of 1 to 10? Is he responsible? Does he show up on time? Does he teach his class? Does he talk to students? Does he give them an opportunity to ask questions? Does he address concerns? Does he address concerns on assignments? So on a scale of 1 to 10 on responsibility, you can do that. Likewise, you can consider several factors which are important for my job and then take a very objective, quantifiable number. But again, it might be time consuming. Sometimes you cannot measure all the things by numbers. So there could be issues with numbers as well. MBO, management by objectives. Peter Drucker spoke about it. I'll give you a classical example, my own experience with MBO. When my dean came to Jordan campus in Amman for the first time, he called me, Prabhakar, come to my office. So I went to his office. He was sitting with a laptop. And then he asked me a question. What is that you want to do for the students? So I said, blah, blah, blah. I'll do blah, blah, blah. And I'll do blah, blah, blah. Three things. Then he asked me, what is that you want to do for the school? Again, I went three things for the school. Then he asked me, what will you do for the university, NYIT? Again, I said three more things. Then he asked me, what do you want to do for the community, for the industry? I said one more thing. Three, 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 and one. He was listening and he was typing something on his laptop. So I thought maybe the dean is busy. He's not even paying attention to what I'm saying. Suddenly he prints out a paper and I see all the 10 things that I was speaking about. So he gives that piece of paper and he says, can you sign it because you said all the 10 things that you want to do? I'm like, damn, I shouldn't have said all the 10 things. I should have said only two things. Well, why did I talk about 10 different things that I want to do? See, he gave me an opportunity to set my own goals. It's participative goal setting. So MBO depends on goals, results that I'm planning to achieve. He's not telling me what to do. He asked me, what is that you want to do? And all the things that I said, it was voluntary. I was happy saying these are the stuff that I will do. And because I said them and he involved me in taking those decisions on the goals that I plan to achieve, he asked me to sign on the dotted line. He said, next year I'll come back. I want to see how many of these 10 things that you will accomplish. I was really in a tight spot because he came back next year. I had finished doing 7 things out of the 10. And trust me, 7, he said, was a very good number. He was super impressed. If you see me in New York, still working with NYIT, it's because my dean has been gracious enough to recognize that I've contributed substantially to students, to the school, to the university. And that's because MBO, management by objectives, Peter Drucker's, he got me to be involved in setting my own goals every single year. And we are measured against what we have said we will do. And he gives us all the kind of support that we deserve because he's a great mentor. Okay, that's MBO. 360-degree appraisal. Suppose you get an employee's appraisal from his peer group, from his colleagues, from his boss, from his customers. That for me is a 360-degree appraisal. And I think School of Management follows a 360-degree appraisal. If you're aware, your feedback is taken, students' feedback is taken. One of my colleague does a peer observation. Then there is what we call a school personnel committee. And one more person comes and sits in my class and does an appraisal. So obviously it's a 360-degree appraisal. Then we have several committees which look into my work with industry, with community and stuff like that. Then we have an appraisal by my dean as well. Apart from, the SPC and by peer group, even my dean appraises me. So it's a 360-degree appraisal. Everybody's appraising me because we want to see how I'm contributing to every single stakeholder. Multi-person, again, the same example, School of Management appraisal that I go through every year. is a multi-person because a peer, another faculty is observing my class. SPC members, the school personnel committee member is observing my class. They evaluate my resume. They evaluate my contributions in teaching, research, and service. And then there's my dean also who appraises me. So it's a multi-person so that you reduce the number of errors that you can make in appraising, and the personal bias is gone. So compensation, dear, this is such an important thing for all of you guys. It's about money, your how much you get paid, and whether you're getting paid equitably and whether you're happy with your compensation. So we're discussing the most important thing. In Jordan campus, I asked students, what motivates you? And I was thinking somebody is going to say nature of work, the kind of contribution. Maybe somebody will say family, if somebody will say something else. But everybody told me money. So today we are talking about money, guys. The most important thing, compensation, pay and benefits. So, the question of compensation basically depends on certain things, which is the kind of job that you are doing will determine kind of pay that you will take. What kind of business? Certain businesses get highly paid. Businesses in if you're employed with a finance company, a banking company, a stockbroking company, maybe the salaries are higher. So be careful to choose the kind of industry that you want to be associated with. The hotel business, they don't pay that much. This is my observation. I could be wrong. So the kind of business determines the compensation. Unionization. Sometimes unions determine benefits. They will negotiate, they will go for collective bargaining, and they arrive at something that's mutually acceptable. And it's there in the union agreement that you might have. Faculty here in NYT, New York, are unionized, and so they have a collective bargaining agreement, which we call as the CBA. So, likewise, unions also determine the kind of benefits package which is acceptable for everyone. So, that kind of determines an element of the compensation, which is benefits. Labor or capital intensive. See, sometimes if you're in an industry which is labor intensive, say like agriculture, the wages that people get paid who are working in the field of agriculture, because it's labor intensive, the salaries and the wages are not very high. But if you're talking of capital intensive, you might get into an industry like automobile industry, which is capital intensive, a lot of investments in equipment, in machinery, and location, plant locations, and raw material, and plenty of inventory that they manage. It's capital intensive. The salaries, wages can be different. Management philosophy. You might get into a company where the management philosophy, somebody has questions. Okay, so the management philosophy can determine the level of compensation, location. For the same job that if I did in India as a faculty, my salary is going to be way much lesser than what it is in the United States. So the geographical location definitely has an impact on compensation. Okay, and the company profitability. If the company is making a lot of money, and definitely the compensation is going to be higher. If they make lesser money, and then the compensation is going to be much lesser. Size of the company, the larger the company, maybe the greater is the chance for higher compensation. That's possible. Tenure and performance. Sometimes I might become a tenured faculty, my compensation could be different, and definitely performance has an impact on compensation as well. Okay. Yeah. So we have the next learning objective, which is discuss contemporary issues in managing human resource. We are almost towards the end of the class. So let me finish this. Managing downsizing. I already told you that. You should be honest when you communicate that to your employees, that we might have a situation where you might have to downsize, you might have to lay off some employees on a temporary basis. And you can also tell your surviving employees the new goals and expectations. And you can also explain impacts of layoffs, what will happen, and if there is any legislation that has to be complied with, you've got to make sure that you're complying with the laws which govern layoffs. You need to provide support, counseling for employees that are still with you. You also have to reassign roles according to individual talents and backgrounds. So that's part of your job. When you're downsizing, you can relocate somebody, you can redeploy your individuals based on the talents. It's not just you lay them off, and do everything to keep the morale and keep them motivated. So you can offer individualized reassurance, you can communicate, you can one to one. If you can communicate, that will be great. Remain involved as much as you can be. That's a great thing to do when you're downsizing. These are issues that you can face. And I think this is my last slide for today's class: workforce diversity. That's a great thing to work with because, see, I worked in Abu Dhabi, I worked in Amman, I worked in India, I'm now working in the US. To work with the cross-cultural teams, to work with the employees and colleagues who come from different cultures is a great blessing because they bring in difference in different dimensions to thinking. And they, for any problem that you might have, they have multi-dimensional approaches, and they're very creative, very innovative. And so workforce diversity is a great blessing. And that means non-traditional recruitment sources can be used to ensure that there is enough inclusivity, there's enough workforce diversity. And yeah, sometimes you can actually sense that some companies, some institutions do not want to select based on region, gender, race. I don't know. So it's sad, but that's still there. But it's important that you do not violate the legislations and the law, and you should have a non-discriminatory selection, because if you understand workforce diversity works in your favor, it actually helps you propel innovation. That's a great thing to have. Accommodation of diverse needs, because workforce diversity, see, it's important. Like when you have, say, holidays for a particular kind of religion, for a particular kind of community, I think you need to have holidays declared for other communities, people who come from other, cultural backgrounds. You respect their space, you respect their culture, you respect the time that they require to participate in their community events and stuff. So accommodation of diverse needs is a very important thing. Diversity consciousness workshops. I mean, most of the times when people, suppose you never travel out of your country, I mean, you cannot be blamed because you might simply not be aware of other cultures. So these workshops really get you familiar. You say, I never knew this. I never knew that. I wish I could know this, because once you appreciate other cultures, and once you appreciate the kind of cultural issues that might be there, you understand why somebody behaves something, why they need time off on certain days, or you can devise certain kind of benefits for employees accommodating their cultural diversity. Mentoring programs is a great thing to have, so that you can mentor others who might not be culturally sensitive, or who might not be having the experience of working with very diverse workforce. So that's another important thing that you might want to keep at the back of your mind. And this is, again, a responsibility of every manager as much as it is the responsibility of a human resource manager. And basically, that's what actually finishes off our discussion for today. I talked about sexual harassment, and I've also explained that we go through training on sexual harassment and how to report workplace harassment and sexual harassment at the workplace itself. And we know the steps to be taken. We know the individuals that can be contacted. We have the details. We know the offices. We're aware of different situations and what we are responsible for as individuals and as organizations. And that's a very important thing, right? And that's a very serious thing that the human resource management must ensure that all their employees are aware of. They're trained, and whatever changes in law that happen from time to time, that we are aware of those changes as well, so that people who come and work, or customers who come and approach us for certain products and services, They don't have this intimidation all the time. They don't have to feel insecure, that people are treated with the kind of respect and dignity that they deserve. So I think I've just finished off that. And of course, we also want to make sure we control healthcare and pension. That means you want a workforce that's healthy. You create, say, facilities for training. You create facilities for health conscious people. Try and tell them what's good diet. If they have to go through some yoga classes or meditation classes, if they need some specific counseling on health related issues, do you have qualified personnel who can give that kind of service on campus? All these kind of things are important to control HR costs. And you want to make sure that you have a healthy workforce which is fit and raring to go all the time. So I just finished off this chapter. So if you have any